The heart of really what we come to do well is understand our clients.
Understanding what the needs of the family are.
Help them make some decisions.
Preparing the next generation for what's to come.
Being on a first name basis, getting to know their stories.
Working through their questions, their concerns, and figuring out the solution that's best.
They trust us enough to come in and help them solve that.
You really feel at the end of the day when you add value, there's a great sense of accomplishment and reward.
Henry David Thoreau once said, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." In managing wealth, there's an awful lot to look at. Taxes and trusts, family meetings and bonds, and everything in between. It's why we rely on those who know each of these fields so deeply that they can see where others are merely looking, who can focus on what's best for clients over generations. After all, that's what expertise is.
Early on, Bob Hall Jr. learned a simple truth on the farm. What you feed an animal shapes what it becomes. From hand-tied bags to a fully automated mill, Hallway Feeds has grown year after year into a modern equine-only operation with one purpose: fueling champions. Race 13, Prep 14, Fiber Energy. Crafted for high-performance athletes, backed by research and trusted by champions, including well over 100 Eclipse Award winners. Hallway Feeds, we fuel excellence.
This land, full of possibility, treasure, and heritage. Bill Justice knows this land, and he's regarded as the most respected farm broker in central Kentucky. Bill is trusted. He's depended upon for his knowledge and integrity, and his team at Justice Real Estate knows the horse industry firsthand.
Lexington, Kentucky is the horse capital of the world, and we strive to keep it that way. A very special place. At Justice Real Estate, we care about this land, the families, and the horses that thrive here. Justice Real Estate, find your place in the bluegrass.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2026 Virtual Thoroughbred Owner Conference Series. I'm Gary Falter with the Jockey Club, and this is the third of 10 panels in our series of webinars that take place this year. And today's panel topic, we're going to talk about owning a thoroughbred farm. And the audience, as the panel progresses, please use the Q&A feature on your screen to submit any questions about the topics. And at the end of the session, we'll try to get to as many questions as time allows. But before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors. And I'm going to start with the presenting sponsors, Bessemer Trust. I believe you saw their ad a moment ago. Our friends at Keeneland and at Dean Dorton Equine. And today our panel sponsors are Justice Real Estate and Hallway Feeds. You may have seen their ads a moment ago. And the Q&A sponsor at the end of the session is West Point Thoroughbreds. So our sincere thank you to all the sponsors for their continued support of thoroughbred ownership and the webinar series. And you can see on the screen the list of sponsors we have this year, and it's very much appreciated. That's a great group. Okay, so we're fortunate enough to have 4 speakers today who have experience in purchasing, insuring, and even owning a horse farm. So let's introduce our speakers. So I'm going to start with our first speaker, Nicole Hammond. Welcome, Nicole.
Hello.
Great. So Nicole is the owner of December Farm, which is located just outside Midway, Kentucky. Next, I'd like to introduce Bill Justice. Welcome, Bill.
Great to be here.
And Bill's the founder of Justice Real Estate. You just saw his ad a moment ago, and he's a sponsor on this panel today. Next, I'd like to introduce Gail Van Leer. Gail, there she is.
Morning, everyone.
Welcome. Well, afternoon here, morning where you are.
Well, it's morning here on the West Coast.
So Gail's an equine advisor and bloodstock agent, and she's out of California, but you see her all over the place. I just saw her in Ocala a week ago. And next is Mike Levy. Mike, welcome. There you are. Okay. And Mike is the founder of Muirfield Insurance. All right, so let's get started. I've got questions for our panelists, and we're going to go through these questions and have a great conversation on this topic. So I'm going to start off with owning a thoroughbred farm. It can be a very rewarding experience and on many, many levels. So what are some of the main reasons that owning a thoroughbred farm is a good decision for some owners to take? And we're going to start with Bill. Bill, you sell a lot of farms. You have a lot of conversations with people about farm ownership. Well, what are some of the good reasons to own a thoroughbred farm?
Gary, first of all, I want to thank you for doing these webinars. I think they're very, very beneficial to the thoroughbred industry, and please keep it up.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you.
The only reason he invited me on this panel was because I paid for the sponsorship.
It's a good reason.
Yeah. No,
Gary,
I like your background. Go for it.
Gary, I think that owning a horse farm in central Kentucky can be one of the most rewarding experiences anyone could ever achieve. There is not a better lifestyle culture than that of living on a horse farm, getting to live in this landscape, having your eyes on these horses as they develop every day is a tremendously unique and fulfilling experience. In addition to that, a horse farm owner has total control, as Nicole and Mike will know, over the care and management of their horses and the land they thrive on. Plus, as we all know, land is always a sound investment, especially here in central Kentucky and especially after COVID.
Okay. So Nicole, what would you like to add to that? You're a farm owner. Why would somebody in our audience who's thinking about farm ownership, why would they want to consider that?
I mean, I think that for me personally, the biggest thing is being in control of how these horses are raised. You know, it's one thing to be a broodmare manager on a farm and sort of, you know, take the lead, but when you're actually owning them and you're in control of and seeing everything every single day, I think for me is the main thing. I get to make all the decisions. I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so I like to be able to, you know exactly what's going on and really just make those decisions day to day, seeing, you know, what their temperatures are and, you know, just the little things that people sort of take for granted when you're, especially with breeding, you know, mares and foals. You know, a lot of people, and I've discovered this with some new clients that, you know, they really think that they show up in the paddock one day just looking the way they do without realizing all of the extra work and all of the things you do every single day when it comes to raising these creatures. So for me, it's just being able to see them every day. I love it.
So Gail, you advise people out in California about horse farm ownership. Talk about some of the positives, and then we're going to probably turn the table and talk about what are some of the not so positive. Let's start with the positives first.
Well, I think I'm in a little bit of a unique position because I've been involved in farms in California as well as Kentucky. And it's like, it's two different things because the way we raise horses in California is a lot different from Kentucky. But what's consistent through farm period is the beauty of the farm, the beauty of the land, your ability to be able to, as Nicole says, to be able to control much of what nature doesn't control and how your horses are raised and cared for, the staff that's handling them. So there's a lot of positive aspects of that. And I just, for me, that just being able to get up in the morning and before all the employees get there and it's really quiet and the mist is across the pastures, things like that are the esoteric part of owning the farm that are really priceless.
Great. Okay. Mike, what would you like to add to all this?
I think Bill used a great word in lifestyle. We were fortunate enough to pretty much build out the farm that we had for 25 years, and raising our children there was something that I will never, you can't put a figure on it. So that you have to want to live the lifestyle. Owning a farm because you think you can save money that's not a good reason to own a farm. You have to participate in the lifestyle of not only the farm, but your animals and your trees and everything else.
Okay. So let's go ahead.
I was just going to add too, I think there's a big difference between owning a farm and running a business, right? And so you're talking about two completely different things. So, I just wanted to sort of say that yes, like owning a farm is great, but running a business, running it as a business is something completely different.
Okay. So, when you own a farm, it comes with a lot of responsibilities. What are some of the reasons that a person, they may want to own a farm, they're not sure? If you were trying to advise somebody and maybe even try to talk them out of it, what are some of those responsibilities and reasons why a person may want to reconsider owning a horse farm? So let's just go around again, starting with Bill. So Bill, I mean, you sell a lot of farms. I know that's probably your priority, but what would you advise somebody who may not be the right candidate to own a farm?
Well, first of all, there really aren't many reasons not to own a farm. But
well said.
But I would, especially someone in the real estate business, but I would caution someone with, Gail, did I make you laugh?
Only a little.
If you get to know me, you know that I enjoy my job very much.
Yes.
I take it very seriously. But I would caution someone, Gary, who does not have a working knowledge of the land or the equine industry. You're going to be at a disadvantage. So you'll need to have the money or the resources to hire the right people, plus be prepared to dedicate a lot of time to running that farm.
Okay. I've often heard it said, owning a farm is a labor of love. So Gail, as you're advising clients, what are some of the realities that you point out to them?
Well, I completely agree with what Bill said, and I think that it's not something that you can just visit every weekend and then wave your staff goodbye and say, have a good week. You have to be all in. You have to be part of the farm, part of the life of the farm. And like Mike said, I couldn't think of a better environment to raise kids in. That's kind of one of those priceless things. But there's also, it's very difficult, and I think as the years go by, it gets more difficult. It's a lot harder to get real good staffing. So if you don't have the knowledge that you need to run the farm, and I see Nicole raising her eyes, the staffing becomes a huge issue, especially if you yourself are not there on the farm running the farm. I have never actually owned a farm, but I've been a farm manager, and then I've also been, the other aspects of helping people set up their farm. But, there's things like, why am I hearing hoof prints on the pavement at 2 a.m? There should be no horses walking on pavement right now at 2 a.m. And that's you putting on your shoes and grabbing that halter and lead shank that's always by your front door, running out to investigate why there's loose horses on the farm somewhere. And that's not unusual. That's a day-by-day thing. So you have to know that you have to be all in, as you're not just the owner of the farm. You have to put your blood, sweat, and tears into it as well. And there are great rewards for it, but it's really time consuming.
Okay. So Nicole, as a farm owner, you have a lot of responsibilities. Just talk about what some of those responsibilities and how being all in is necessary.
Well, you've got clients. Well, personally for me, I have clients. So, I'm not taking care of my horses. I'm taking care of other people's horses. And so I think that's, a huge responsibility. If you're doing this just for yourself and you're buying a farm, you've got different responsibilities there. It's just it's a huge undertaking. I live in my barn. So as Gail was saying, you hear something at night. Like I don't sleep well, because I'm always, on edge. I'm always waiting, for something to happen. My living quarters is literally attached. So every little sound wakes me up. And that's a great thing, because I'm taking responsibility, but it can also, it weighs on you a lot. Horses are extremely fragile, and they just look for things to do, like escape barns and stalls and everything else. So, you just have to be prepared that your life is going to change big time. I think, that's the main thing, is you're not going to get it to go away for 2 weeks at a time at Christmas and go visit family a lot of the time, because your staff is going to want to go do that, things like that. So.
Okay. Hey, Mike, would you like to add anything?
Well, if you think it can't happen, it will happen.
Yes, it will.
And that is the reality of it. And bad things happen, unfortunately. And, we had plenty of client horses as well. And you got to make bad phone calls from time to time. And that's not easy. And it certainly doesn't get easy as you get older. But again, going back to the rewards of it, can be worth it. But you have to have eyes wide open walking in.
Okay. So Bill, let me ask you this.
Big win or one big thing, and you're sucked in. You love it. It's great. It's wonderful. Having that, positive stuff happen. It's not just the negative. It's always the positive too.
So Bill, you've sold a lot of farms. I mean, is it possible for an owner to own the farm yet be only somewhat involved, maybe an absentee owner that they visit the farm on occasion, but their staff pretty much does all the work? I mean, is that an option for someone to consider?
I think in a large scale operation, yes, it happens.
Okay.
I think the Goodman family, they were one of the first, and I think Mike will agree, that moved. We had a lot of absentee owners in the 70s and 80s. And they moved their entire family here. They put their kids in school here. They moved here, and you're seeing that more and more. But you're seeing operations like Coolmore and Juddmont that are run by, I don't want to say absentee owners, but people that don't live here.
Right. Okay. All right. So that is an option then. So Mike, let's talk about insurance. A lot of responsibilities. What are some of the insurance considerations when somebody decides, I'm going to take the leap, I'm going to buy a farm? Talk about those different insurance considerations that they have to have in mind.
So let's start with the property itself, structures, houses, stuff like that. Then you're going to need liability, because the two go hand in hand when you have horses. If you are keeping horses or boarding horses for other people and charging a fee for that, you need to have something that's called care, custody, and control, which means that if there is an accident, that there was negligence on your staff or yourself, you are in care, custody, and control of that animal that is not owned by you. And we highly recommend everybody has that if they're boarding outside horses.
Okay.
And then you've got work comp for your employees. And then you've got general auto for your farm trucks and trailers.
Okay, so that sounds like about a half a dozen different policies or more.
Well, they kind of all wrap
Mike,
into one.
Okay.
They kind of
Mike,
all
do you
wrap.
recommend replacement cost insurance on your significant buildings?
We do, and we have a formula for that with an inflation factor that goes up every year.
Okay.
I think that's important.
Well, and it depends too, Gary and people watching. Do I have a mortgage? Right? What are the financial realities if I have a loss? And that all comes into play as well.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add to that, Nicole, from an insurance perspective?
Not really. I mean, these are all things that you have to take into consideration. I mean, it's, the insurance overall, I mean, is just something you have to have if you have a mortgage. You don't have a choice. I mean, you have to do it.
Right.
But it's part of running a business.
Mm-hmm. Mike, talk about insuring your horses, mares, foals, stallions?
So again, that comes down to personal risk profiles. And some people have enough resources that they don't believe they need insurance on their animals. And some people are very fond of their animals. They need, it's their cash crop, so to speak. So they insure their horses. Horses are insured by risk category. So you have breeding risk, you have racing risk, you have rearing risk, which means different life cycles of the horse when it's born through when it becomes a yearling, 2-year-old, etc. And if you are leveraging your horses in some form or fashion, you have to have insurance. I like to, if you went to a flea market and you bought a painting because you liked it for $500 and you put it on your wall, and 15 years later somebody walked in and said, you know, that's worth $250,000. Do you call your insurance agent and insure it, or do you say, well, I only gave $500 for it, I'm okay with that? So it comes down to personal choices, and every client is different.
Okay, but it's something that new farm owners should consider.
Well, if there weren't bad things that happened, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, all right. So farms, they can range from small 10, 20 acre tracts to hundreds or even thousands of acres. So for those in the audience that would like to own maybe a smaller farm, and I'll say under 100 acres, how available and how affordable are these farms? I mean, Bill, are there many farms like that in the central Kentucky area? And if so, are they affordable?
Well, I think that the inventory for small farms are as low as I've ever seen it. Gary, we all got to remember the golden rule in real estate: location, location, location. You will pay a premium in central Kentucky for a well-located small farm, especially under 50 acres, and especially those in close proximity to the horse park. But if you're willing to sacrifice a little location, willing to do a little work on the farm, that type of farm is out there, and it's reasonably affordable.
Okay.
You could find a good real estate agent to help you, though.
Okay, I think I know one. Nicole, so you're a farm owner. What did you tell me? 150 acres. So that's not a huge farm. Are there many farms like that out there, or is yours the norm, or is it more the exception in central Kentucky?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know what mine is. think that's probably a better answer for Bill, or question for Bill, I should say, as to, I really don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of 50-acre farms, I'm guessing. And then there's the huge ones, the ones that are run by big corporations that, that are 1,000 acres. As far as my farm goes, all I know is what I do. So I can't answer that for you. Sorry.
Okay. So Gail, out in California, what was that, Mike?
We insure plenty of farms that are 150 acres or less.
Okay.
So they are out there. It's not the norm, but they are out there. Speaking from somebody who used to own one that was less than 150.
Okay.
Gary, in central Kentucky, excuse me, the average thoroughbred farm is roughly 175 acres. That's the average thoroughbred farm.
Okay.
Remember that we had the World Games here in 2010.
Sure.
So there's a lot of small farms out there that range in that 5 to 50 acre range. But the average thoroughbred farm is roughly about 175 acres.
Okay. So Gail, talk about the landscape in California for somebody that may want to own a horse farm.
Well, I'm sure you all read the news about how racing's not doing so well in California right now. So there's not exactly a long line of people trying to buy farms here. But that said, the property values here are completely different from what you're going to find in Kentucky. So a lot of farms started out in the middle of nowhere, and now cities have grown towards them. So the property becomes more valuable as an industrial park than a horse farm, shall we say. So it's just a different way of looking at things. And the whole management aspect of a horse farm in California, where you've got really important things to think about, which water is one of them. Water is a huge issue out here. So I think it's hard to compare Kentucky to California. Most of the farms in California tend to be much, much smaller than anything you're talking about there in Kentucky. So I think I know you were going to ask some questions about horses per acre. Well, there's a really big difference in what happens in California versus Kentucky, because a lot of our farms are dry pastures. We don't have grass, and we feed hay all year round. And so it becomes more of an issue of how many horses is it good for the horses to be in a pasture of that size. So yeah, it's like you're comparing bananas and oranges or something. There's not really a comparison here.
Okay. So Bill, on the other side of the coin, are there a lot of large farms that are available and affordable for anybody in the audience that may want to start ownership on a much larger farm?
So we have Bill smiling.
Well, remember, we are in Central Kentucky, Gail, the horse capital of the world.
That's right.
The larger turnkey farms that don't require a lot of updates would be expensive, and rightfully so. They don't come on the market very often, but they're out there. For instance, I have Adena Springs for sale. It's 2,245 acres. Coolmore just purchased about 1,220 acres from Shadwell for over $46.5 million. I want to say that wealthy horsemen and women all over the world who want to make their mark in the bluegrass are looking for large farms, turnkey farms. People like Don Alberto, John Stewart, the Bernhards who bought Pin Oak are just a few examples of people that have made recent purchases.
Okay.
And they will be expensive, but there's no place like it in the world.
Okay, that's good to know. So Mike, back to insurance. Are there any insurance considerations based on the size of the farm, a large versus a small, or is pretty much the policies are what they are?
Pretty much the policies are what they are. You know, everything's rated by property activity in terms of liability, and whether you have 10 horses or you have 120 horses, that's how your liability and your care, custody, and control will be rated. And we can make anything fit. So there are no no's in the insurance business for farms.
Okay, so if the farm has a training track and they break their own horses and they gallop their own horses, there's policies to cover that?
There are.
Okay, all right, very good. So Gail, you mentioned this a moment ago. It's been said that a farm should have a minimum of 1 grazable acre per turned out horse, and we're talking about areas where there is good pasture. So is that a reasonable ratio, or if not, what is a good horse to turned out horse to pasture ratio? Nicole, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it depends on your pasture. It depends on the seasons. I think it depends also, like if you like this past year we had April, we had almost no rain, right? So, it really affects the ground and, what I'm comfortable with. And so I tend to, rotate a lot. I think that's important. But, overall, I think, in this area, I think, 1 horse per acre is acceptable.
Okay. Gail, out in California, you'd mentioned there's not a lot of green grass pasture. So is it even a factor?
Well, yeah, it's not you're not depending on the grass for the nutrients for your horse. I think it becomes more important that they have space to run and safe fencing in that space to run. We pretty much control their diet by what we feed them in the grain supplements and the hay that they get. And some of the best hay in the world is grown right here in California. So it's very different. I know for my client horses that I board out, my number one criteria is I don't want to see 20 yearlings in 1 acre. I mean, and that's not, that's like crazy, but it does happen. So I want my horses spread out so that they have room to run and room, to be horses. We don't have the luxury of having a 40-acre pasture with 15 horses in it like you can in Kentucky. So it's really quite different. But I just from what I see in Kentucky, and Nicole hinted on it, there's different areas in Kentucky where the soil is different and the grass grows differently. So I think you have to know your own farm, and you have to know that this pasture wears out faster than that pasture. And as Nicole said, rotate, rotate, rotate.
Okay. So you had mentioned fat. Go ahead, Bill.
So I try to recommend to my clients, and you made a very good point, Gail, and I understand what you're saying, Nicole, but in my almost 50 years of experience, we try to tell people to plan on, for a thoroughbred operation, 2.5 to 3.5 acres per horse. Count a mare and a foal as one. Overgrazing increases parasites and degrades the land. Good pasture management and rotation and the soil quality, it varies immensely wherever you go. But I try to tell people to figure on 2.5 to 3.5 acres, net acres, not gross acres per horse. What do you think, Mike?
I would agree with that. Every operation's different. And again, it's how hard you use the land that you have. And can you get away with an acre a horse? You can, but you're going to have to rest that land, which has been said. And so it depends on your soil. If you're top of the ridge and you've got a deep base, well, that land can take more than if you're a little lower and and have rock closer to the surface, etc. So it's a management thing, and you have to know your land and how much it can take. Because once it goes, it's really expensive to get it back.
It's true.
Okay.
And
so
Nicole,
you mentioned,
Gary, Nicole's on great land in Midway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm very lucky. So, and I also add, I don't think I've ever had one horse per acre on my farm. So
yeah, sure.
Thank you for saying that.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, I also take hay off my farm too. And so, we roll our own grass hay, so I'm always, moving horses around to make sure that the grass can grow so that we can get, some really good, bluegrass bedding and, some hay for the winter that we can just feed right off the fields. So, there's that as well.
So Nicole, when you mentioned rotating fields, I think Bill, you mentioned it. What does that entail? I mean, do you take the horses off those fields for a period of time, and what's a good number for that? A month, a couple of weeks?
It depends really on the weather. And so, I have, some paddocks that I use more than others only because of their location, of where they're located, close to the barn, and so I tend to use those ones a little bit more, especially during foaling season, so those ones come, spring, I try and let them rest a lot longer. And so I may go 4 or 5 months, with them. I have some fields that just don't get used as much. And so I just don't need to rotate them as much. So it just really depends on the time of year, how much rain we're getting, that kind of thing.
Well, that's all falls into the ownership and the management of that property.
Yeah, and just walking around and looking, actually seeing, okay, you know what, this doesn't look so good and it's so hot right now. So let's get these horses out and move them over here. And yeah, I'm sorry, guys, you're going to have to walk further today, as far as the staff. And, those are the kind of things you take into account, which is, how you set up your farm, how the farm is actually laid out as well. How convenient it is for the staff to move horses around and that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, we have people on our call here from all over the country. I know we've been talking about Central Kentucky and about California, but there are people that can buy a horse farm anywhere from Ohio to Florida all the way to Texas. Are there certain types of grass for pasture that a new farm owner needs to consider when they buy a farm? Are there certain types of pastures that should be avoided, especially if you've got mares and foals? Or is grass grass? If it's green, they can eat it and it's fine. So who'd like to start with that one?
Answer is no. No,
Okay.
grass is not grass. I think it depends on where you're living, but obviously, you don't want fescue if you've got mares and babies. I mean, some with, without the endophytes and all of that kind of stuff is not.
Okay, now just stop there. Talk about fescue. What is that? What is that? It's a type of grass?
Type of grass, right?
What does it do?
It can carry, the endophytes, which can cause, problems with pregnant mares.
Okay.
And so you don't want that. You want more like a bluegrass, an orchard grass. I actually like a little bit of clover. So there's just a mixture of grasses. And I will be honest, when I like to say I can't do everything. So I will go over to my feed company or to, somewhere like, I'll give a shout out to Woodford Feed, and they will make up my grass mixture for me. And, they will take a look at, what's out there, what I have, but I also don't mind a little bit. I know this sounds maybe different, but I don't mind, a few weeds. I think like dandelions and some chicory and things like that are not a bad thing for a horse because, it helps with upset stomachs. And, these are things, I know maybe it sounds a little hippie-ish, but I do like, a few weeds here and there. It doesn't have to be perfect and you don't have to kill everything to make a perfect pasture. It just has to be healthy, and it has to grow in your land too, right? So, but Mike, right? You've had.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll bring up that it's not grass per se, because the fescue thing will get covered in all of this, is cherry trees. And I'm not talking about the cherries you buy at the store. I'm talking about hardwood cherry trees. It's where the caterpillars mate, and they have their nests there. And those caterpillars, it's a 20-year cycle or some sort of life cycle, but when they have their 20-year event, those caterpillars can cause abortions, and it's proven science at this stage. And so, the cherry trees usually grow, in the fence lines, et cetera, et cetera. So keeping your mares, pregnant mares, as far away from that risk as possible is also something to consider.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember when the tent caterpillars hit twice, 2 years in a row in Lexington, and everybody got their chainsaws out, cutting down those wild cherry trees.
Yeah.
So Bill, as far as pasture types, any preferences?
I think Nicole hit it on the head that bluegrass and orchard grass, which we have an abundance here in Kentucky, are great for mares, foals, and yearlings. The toxic fescue that you're talking about is called a Kentucky 31 tall fescue, and it's very toxic to infoal mares. But there's a novel tall fescue that looks exactly like the Kentucky 31 fescue that is actually beneficial to horses. That's why when Nicole said she uses Woodford Feed, you can use Southern states. I recommend people go to the farm clinic or another professional service and do proper professional pasture management. That is absolutely critical.
Okay. Yeah, what would you like to add?
Just one more quick thing.
Yeah.
We see from an insurance standpoint, when it comes to certain operations have more placentitis and abortions than others. And pasture management is a science. It's not an art, and it's another resource that needs to be utilized.
And we have it here in Central Kentucky, Mike, and we need to utilize that.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody mentioned fencing a little bit ago. I'd like to talk about the different types of fencing for horses that, safest to use. You see a lot of four-board fence, you see diamond mesh. Certainly don't want to see any barbed wire. But Nicole, talk about the different fencing options that a farm could have and, your opinion on what's safest.
Well, I may go a little bit against what everybody else has or likes, but I actually am okay with 3-board. I know that some of the standardbred farms or saddlebred farms, standardbred farms use a lot of 3-board as opposed to the 4-board. That's what I've always had. That's when I first moved to Kentucky. That's what the farm that I leased had, and I never had any issues with it. It was considerably less expensive when I had to put new fencing in my entire farm because the land I bought didn't have any fencing. And so that to me just made sense at the time. I think it just depends on your preference. I've never, again, had any issues with it. But again, some people would probably prefer 4-board because maybe they feel that it's safer because you've got that extra board in there. I think that's a personal thing. What about you guys? What do you feel?
Was that rough cut oak or what do you use?
Yeah,
oak, not poplar or any or
poplar
pine.
They'll just eat it.
Okay, so rough cut oak.
It's a chew toy.
Okay, so Gail, how about in California? What a lot of the farms use out there?
Rough cut oak is a rare endangered thing in California. So what I think most of the farms tend to use is some sort of a top board, anti-climb, sort of V-mesh wire type of fencing. That's because we just don't have the lumber resources. Any lumber that's used ends up being Douglas fir, so it's not a hardwood, and it doesn't really last that long. The horses sort of chew right through it. So, but that I think if you just did a general survey of farms in California, that's what you're going to see mostly is some kind of V-mesh where foals can't get their legs through the fencing and some sort of a top board wood post situation.
Okay. So Bill, on the farms that you sell, what are the different types of fences you see?
From what I hear, V-mesh fencing with a board on top is the safest, most expensive, the best. 4-board with a batten. And we're talking central Kentucky. The plastic, the vinyl, the Centaur are more popular in Florida, Georgia, et cetera, other areas. But V-mesh with a board on top is what I've been told is the safest.
Okay. All right.
I understand what Nicole's saying about the 3-board. People understand that.
Sure. Okay. Mike, anything you'd like to add to that?
So from a safety standpoint, the synthetic or the plastic fencing is the safest. And I can say that definitively because they bounce off of it. You have to put the posts on the outside, but they do bounce off of it. V-mesh is preferred. A lot of people think, that the rodents can't get in there. They can because it has to be lifted up a little bit in order to be able to mow it. But V-mesh is great. V-mesh is also a lot easier to fix. And I found that out firsthand last couple of months. Because the mesh, if they jump the fence, they clear the top board or they break through the top board, the mesh just drops. So all you got to do is put the board back up, top board back up, and just nail the mesh back up. So it's very durable. 3-board or 4-board, it's going to rot eventually, and you're going to have to replace it, and it's not cheap. So that's what I got there.
Okay, so if I were a new farm owner and I had to replace all the fencing on the farm, I mean, is it going to last me 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? I mean, what's the expectation on putting up new fence?
My understanding is 20 years, but again, I don't know that that's across the board, and it depends, I guess, the kind of fence and.
Okay. The V-mesh, does it seem to last longer or about the same?
V-mesh will last. I mean, it's wire, so it's going to last the longest. Your posts, you're going to have to replace your posts over time because the
Okay.
The part of the post that's in the ground is going to rot away over time with soil and water and everything else. So
Okay.
the posts are going to go. The synthetic stuff lasts forever because it's synthetic, but
Right.
there too, you're going to have to replace your posts as well.
Okay. All right. Good. So somebody mentioned finding good, reliable help. So what's that like in today's world, finding reliable help to staff your farm for grooms and people to mow the fields and repair the fences? So Gail, why don't you start with that one? How difficult is it today, if at all, to find good help?
It's extremely difficult, and personally, I think that's one of the key driving factors of farm ownership is being able to get adequate staff and dependable staff. I mean, to me, that's where it all begins. If I was buying a farm today, I would start with trying to find the staff before I even found the farm. At least try to get some of your key people, your farm manager and a foreman or so, and then you can build the rest of the staff from there. But that truly is one of our biggest problems.
Okay. So Nicole, where do you turn to find staff? I mean, just not out there to bring them in. How do you even find people to work on the farm?
I mean, you have to compromise, unfortunately, at least I have. I mean, you're not going to, this is, I can't afford me, and that's how I know that sounds very arrogant, but it's like trying to find somebody who can replace me is impossible. And so I have to compromise and be willing to say, okay, well, this person is really great at doing X, Y, and Z, but I need to find, someone else who can do something else, that other part that may be missing. And so you just have to be a little bit flexible with your staff. I know for a fact that people do not want to work necessarily the long hours that we used to work 20 years ago. The grooms, they don't want to be doing it, 6 days a week anymore. It's a different, it's just different now. And so I think, I tend to look more for students, who want to learn, they're getting into it, they're new, and so they're willing to learn, and you get a better idea too of what their strengths are. And so, you just have to be really, really flexible with people and understand that, what you expect and what you want from, your staff isn't necessarily going to be what they want to give, and so you have to sort of get to know them, and it's hard, there are not the people anymore that there were 20 years ago. I used to remember I would have people come to my gate and ask for work, looking for a job.
Wow.
And that does not exist anymore. I mean, there are.
Well, if it does exist, you don't want them.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, if they come to my gate now, I'm like, go away. But yeah, it's just a different time. And so looking for people, I know this sounds, funny, but I have a good luck on Facebook. You can put an ad up and you can say, hey, this is where, and you get a lot of people who are interested, and you can weed through people much easier that way too, without actually having to go and interview them. You can, see their profiles and see who they are and get an idea of what they're about, and so I think social media helps us in that way.
Okay.
But, it's definitely different and it's hard.
Okay. So Bill, when you advise a new client that wants to buy a big, beautiful horse farm, do you give them any advice or direction on how you need to staff this?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think qualified legal farm help is a real issue, but it's also true of any business in America today. Finding qualified people to do anything.
Yeah.
If you have a good one, you want to keep them, you better compensate them and give them a good package. But it's difficult.
Okay. All right. Let me just ask, go in a little bit different direction. Are there any tax advantages to owning a horse farm as opposed to boarding your mares, foals, and yearlings at a farm? So, if I got a dozen mares and 10 foals and some layups. It's costing me a lot. I might want to buy a farm, but are there any tax advantages to doing that, Mike?
There are. So, tax wise, on owning a farm, right off the bat, you have depreciation of your structures and your land, different schedules. Um, it tends to jump around with administrations, but right now we're in a period where if you make 250,000 a year and you go buy a broodmare for $100,000, that $100,000 comes directly off your taxable income that first year, as well as accelerated depreciation on your vehicles, on your tractors, on your even on your structures. So there are tax advantages there if you're going to run it as a business. Farms generally can show a loss. You're going to have to be making money somewhere else to be able to keep showing that loss. And you're going to have to show an intent to make a profit.
Okay.
You have to be able to prove that. But there are significant tax advantages. To take advantage of the tax advantages, you have to have recurring income that are going to make it worthwhile.
Okay. And one of our sponsors, Dean Dorton Equine, is one that you could turn to, audience, if you have questions about what those tax advantages are. So thanks, Mike, for giving a heads up on that. Bill, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, you need to have a qualified CPA who knows the horse farm operation.
Yeah.
You need, if you're buying a farm, you need to have your buildings, your fencing, your roads appraised immediately so you can depreciate those, as well as Mike said, the equipment. And of course, your losses can offset other income in your business world. But get an appraised value of your buildings, your roads, your fencing, your water lines, all are depreciable. Do it in the beginning, but give it a CPA that has an experience in the horse business.
Okay. Audience, we've got a couple more questions that I have. If you have a question for any of the speakers, now would be a good time to submit your question. Just click on that Q&A button that you should see on your screen and submit your question, because we're going to get to the Q&A session here shortly. So I've got a couple more questions, panelists. So, we all know it's difficult to turn a profit as an owner in our industry. Are there any financial advantages to owning a farm that can increase the opportunity to operate in the black? Or is this just another one of those elements in racing and breeding that rarely turns a profit? So who would like to start with that one? I mean, it's hard to make money in our business. We all know that, unless you end up with a Kentucky Derby winner or a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. But, can you turn a profit as a horse farm owner?
I'll take a stab at that.
Yeah, go for it, Mike.
So my grandfather told my father and my father told me, and neither one of us listened, that it's a lot cheaper to pay somebody to take care of your horses than to do it yourself. And my grandfather was correct. However, the more land you have, the easier it is to turn a profit if you're running it as a business. Because the more those horses can be outside and can live, quote, off the land, the less labor, food, et cetera, has to go into raising that horse. So if you can afford more land, buy more land. And as Bill said, over time, it's a great investment. But in general, it is very difficult. The last 5 years have changed everything. I mean, the costs of feed and work comp, insurance, unfortunately, plank fencing, everything has almost doubled in the last 4 to 5 years. And so it's difficult, don't get me wrong. But you've got to probably be committed to sell your cash crop too, which are the horses,
Okay.
to have any chance.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, you're a farm owner. You've got a lot of good clients, I would assume. I mean, is that key to having a profitable operation, is to have, those great clients?
It is. I mean, it's very difficult because you're relying on those clients, and the clients will come and go. Clients will get in the business, they'll get out of the business, and you're at their mercy. And so if you're running it like a business where you're boarding, like I do, it's a little bit different than if you're buying a farm and, you're investing everything, with your own horses, you're doing your own thing. It's also different too if you have, other income that's feeding that farm, which, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of farms in Kentucky where, there's other income involved. They're not relying on actually raising those horses and turning a profit every year. I mean, it's nice if they can, but that's not always the case. But, I think it's just a very hard thing to do, is to run a business out of a boarding farm or breeding and boarding, because, people come and go. They have bad luck, and, they get frustrated, and you're relying on that. But then you also have great clients who do very well, and, then they pass it down. And so it's yes and no.
Okay.
I'm not committing
Bill?
to that.
Bill, what would you like to add to this?
Well, unfortunately, Carl Icahn said the same thing that Mike's grandfather said. So I took it literally, Gary. I mean, your boarders can offset some of your expenses, but if you can turn those boarders into people who will buy and sell with you, it's another way to increase income. I don't know if Nicole does that or not, but if you can turn it into, look what TaylorMade's done. I mean, they've turned it into a tremendous business. So there is those possibilities, but it is risky.
Okay. Gail, what would you like to add to this?
I don't think I can really add everything. Everyone else has really covered it. It's difficult. I just think you need to go in expecting never to make a profit.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. That's
yeah. And if you do, be really excited about it. But if you own a few of your own mares and you're raising foals to sell on the yearling market every year, well, then you mix your own horses in with the boarding horses and maybe just break even and be happy.
Okay.
Well, that lifestyle, right, Gail?
Well, that leads into my last question for the panelist. So in your opinion, what is the most important factor for an owner to consider when deciding to purchase a horse farm? And I know a couple of you have talked about the family element, and maybe somebody could even expand on that. So let's just go around the horn and let everybody answer that question. What's that most important factor for especially the audience that's watching to consider when deciding to buy a horse farm or purchase one? Nicole?
Do it because you love it. Don't do it for vanity. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who, think it's easy. It's not, but you will definitely be rewarded. There's nothing like it. I am so glad I moved here.
Great. Okay. Gail.
I will say, because I've been in this unique position of being in California, spending a lot of time in Kentucky. When I'm at the sales in Kentucky, I oftentimes stay on other people's farms. So I have the beauty of being able to look out the window and see the horses. But that one that just ran through the fence over there, that's not my problem. So I really appreciate the farms themselves. And you absolutely, if you want to go into this with both feet, you have to absolutely have passion for horses and you want to love it. You like the beauty of the farms and what you see on a day-to-day basis has to be able to carry you through the bad times, because there will be bad times.
Okay. Mike.
I like to use the analogy, the horses become your kids. And so when they succeed, you succeed. And that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, good point. Bill?
Well, you started out with you're going to end with me, aren't you?
Yeah, sure.
Most important factor is location, location, You should advise a new farm owner to have a business plan.
Yeah.
And to analyze what it's going to cost them to run the type of operation that they want to run. Location, location, and a good real estate agent.
Okay, very good. All right. So that wraps up our panel discussion. So now we're going to move into our Q&A session. And while I go through the questions, we're going to hear from our Q&A sponsor, West Point Thoroughbred. So watch this and we'll be right back.
Passion, performance, and the pursuit of excellence.
At West Point, the horses are the heart of what we do. The partners really are the soul.
The bar that they set is different than everybody else. This starts and ends with the care of the horses.
This is a real immersive experience.
Okay, all right. Thank you, West Point. So first question in the queue. So I'm curious if workman's comp insurance is less expensive in Kentucky as compared to California, or is it the same? So Mike, why don't you take that one? Is workman's comp pretty much the same everywhere?
So workman's comp is based on payroll, so it's a percentage of payroll. And we do safety seminars for the local farms. And we can, if we do a safety seminar once every 3 years, they get a preferred rate. So there can be a difference in rate. In California, I don't know, because I don't believe we do. We don't do comp outside of Kentucky.
Okay. Gail, you're from California. Any
It's
thoughts
high.
there?
It's crazy high. Yeah.
Is it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, it is different
Yeah.
then. Okay, very good. Okay, so here's another question in the queue. Nicole, this is towards you. Do you do horse farm tours at your farm?
I have, no, not to the open public, but I do have some clients that do come by and, we do a big group and that kind of thing. And so we do a little bit of open houses, but they're not really tours. So we do more like a schedule.
Okay, very good. All right. Here's another question. Talk about some of the equipment needed to operate a small horse farm. So Bill, somebody buys a farm and there's no equipment. What are they going to need?
Well, it's depending on the size of the farm, but you're going to need a
Right.
tractor, you're going to need a finish mower, you're going to need a back wing, you're going to need a manure spreader, you're going to need a muck wagon, and you're going to need the tools to fix a fence if you need it immediately. So it's really depending on the size and the scope of the farm.
Okay, so but any
maybe you wanna
farm, 50
hire.
acres. Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, I was just gonna say, and too, like how much of it you want to farm out to, other providers. Do you want to do your own mowing, or do you want to just hire someone to do it for you? So those are things that you need to take into consideration as well.
Okay.
Gary, I'm seeing more and more of that people will hire out. They don't have to worry about the tractor breaking down, the guy showing up for work. So you're seeing more of that contract labor going on.
Kind of outsourcing. Okay. Good to know. All right.
The one thing I would add is you need to have your own truck and trailer, either for breeding shed runs or an emergency. You can't wait on the van company.
Okay. Good point, Mike.
You got to get that horse to the clinic.
Okay, very good point. So when owning and operating a horse farm, I'm thinking about buying one. How easy or difficult is it to get away for some R&R? Nicole, vacations?
Again, it depends on your staff.
Yeah.
It depends if you have people in place who you trust. I mean, things are going to happen whether you're here or not, whether you're on site or not. And I think it's really important that you do get away, that you walk away, even if it's just for a couple of days. I don't know if you guys call it pasture blindness. It's always good to just kind of, you get used to seeing the same thing every day, and it's nice to get away from them so you can come back with fresh eyes. But it's difficult, unless you have somebody that will make that phone call, or that they, can call the vet, that they can make sure that they can drive a truck and trailer in an emergency and get to the clinic. It's difficult, but don't expect that you're going to get away, on weekends necessarily, or Christmas, because those are when the staff wants off.
Okay.
Those are things to consider.
Okay. Anybody else?
Big or small, you're never going to get away. There's always going to be issues that need to be addressed.
Okay.
Having knowledgeable, dependable staff is certainly going to help. Much like
But then you also have really good built-in excuses too. So if you don't want to meet up with your friends, you can just say, "Oh, sorry, I don't know what to tell you." So there's that too.
All right, we'll check mark that one. All right, last question in the queue. So if there's a serious accident on the farm, and maybe this is for you, Mike, who's responsible for the coverage? Is it the farm owner, or is it the person that caused the accident?
Well, in my experience, if there's a serious accident on the farm owner is going to get sued. Everybody's going to get sued, and that's where you have to have the right coverages in place. It depends on the circumstances is the answer.
Okay.
In Kentucky, we have you have to post signs in every barn. If you walk onto Nicole's farm, you are assuming the risk of being injured by one of the animals that lives there, and it's not her fault.
Okay.
If a horse breaks through the fence and runs down the highway and runs into a car and kills somebody, that's a completely different scenario.
Okay.
So it just depends on what happens, but you will get sued no matter what.
But it sounds like make sure you have the right coverage.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So panelists, that wraps up the Q&A. So if you have audience, if you have any follow-up questions for our panelists, here we have their names and their email addresses on the screen. You don't have to jot them all down right now, because we've got all of this recorded, and we'll have it available here in the next day or so. And you can come back to the screen if you have any follow-up questions. So you really like to thank our panelists for their time and insight on this topic of owning a thoroughbred farm. What a unique topic here. So thank you, Bill, Gail, Mike, and Nicole for being here. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Toba, for putting these on, as Bill stated earlier. It's great. We need to educate people.
Okay. Well, speaking of Toba, they asked me to let everyone know that they have a breeding clinic coming up May 29th and 30th in Lexington. So it's a 2-day clinic. So visit toba.org for more information. So also like to take a moment and thank our panel sponsor, Hallway Feeds and Justice Real Estate. Thank you, Bill. But mostly I'd like to thank our audience for being here, and for all owners for investing in our sport. While we have many, many stakeholders in our industry, it's always been my belief that owners are the most important and needed participants. So thank you very much, owners. So we're going to be back in May with a new topic to talk about. So until then, stay safe, enjoy the Preakness and the Triple Crown races, and we hope that you visit the Winner's Circle and you visit it often. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Okay.